So the cool part about using web apps is that you have seamless integration with a lot of different Google services. So to give you an example of that, I'm gonna try to give you an example of integrating our Google Calendar with our web app. So I have this calendar open. As you can see, there is a lot happening here. By a lot, I mean nothing, obviously. What I'm gonna try to do, just to give you an idea, I have this Materialize UI, and in this Materialize UI, if I go under Forms, I'm gonna go under Pickers, and Picker is gonna give me this, for example, this date picker, where we can open, click, and select the date. And what I want to do, I want to add something like a date picker to my project, and I want the user to be only able to select the days when I don't have something already scheduled. So I want to disable any date here where there is something already scheduled in the calendar. So to get this going, first we need to set up the date picker. So we need this input. I'm gonna obviously copy that. We'll go to our web app. Now I'm gonna go to my HTML. This is gonna go, let's actually open the app. This code. So we'll place that, I guess, in here. We have an empty spot. So I'm gonna go back, cancel, and that empty spot was right here. See, we have this row, and we already have this select box, and we could have that input here. I'm just gonna paste the code here, but before we place the code, we also have to make sure we add the column structure, which is this div structure. So I'm gonna copy and paste that for a second here. And in this div, we're not gonna need this select stuff anymore. Now, I don't remember, did we have any sort of label on this? It does say birthday. Where does that text come from? Let's just put the thing in there and we'll figure it out. So I'm gonna go back here, and instead of having all of this select, I'm just gonna keep this label in here because I have this feeling that that might be coming from that label. Maybe not. We'll see. So I'm gonna place this input box there. Now, as usual, because we're probably gonna grab something from this box later on, we're gonna need an ID for this. So let's just add an ID. And we'll call this pref date, for preferred date, I guess. So that's gonna be this. Now, as far as I could tell from Materialize UI, this needs to be initialized. See, when the content loads on the page, it does this selector to grab that date picker class, apparently, and then we have this instance. Okay. I'm gonna just copy that for now and go back to my app. We'll go to our JavaScript side. That's here. See this dumb loaded part. It's good. I'm gonna skip these options for now again. Now I can't call this the same as this one because we already have that. As a matter of fact, this was probably not the best name to start with. So this would be select boxes, and I'm gonna use it there, and this will be date pickers, I guess. You know what, I'm just gonna do date picker for that one date, and instead of doing this selector to get everything, I'll just do get element by ID, and that one was this. Hopefully I didn't mistype anything. That's our date picker, and then we're gonna pass it here to create that instance and see there's instances. So again, that's a variable that we don't really use later on. So for now, I guess I'm not even gonna store it in a variable. Later on, if we decide we're gonna do something with that, we'll probably store it in a variable and we'll call that something better. So that's the date picker, which is this. That should basically create that box. Let's just go see what happened. See, it says application. Apparently that was the label. And if I click in it, well, nothing happens. I don't think that label would interfere with this. Just to verify that, let's just try this. Apparently it does. That was unexpected. So having that label would cause that not to work. All right, I guess you learn something new every day. So that's the date picker. So our intention is, see, now we can go here, pick a date. And if we hit OK, that should populate in this box, right? And apparently if you click on it, it's going to come up again. So now I want to make sure that the dates that are marked in my calendar are marked unavailable here. So first of all, before we even think about getting to the calendar, let's just see how we're gonna disable some dates out of here. So let's go back to Materialize. And I assume we might have options here for that. So auto close, parse default date, set default date, disable day fn. So that's a function apparently to disable days. That's probably what we need to set, and that's a function. Custom function to disable dates. Null. Null is what? Default. Is there any examples of this function? No, this is the time picker now. Okay, that's kind of weird. Not a lot of documentation on this unless I'm not able to find it, which is possible. But apparently we have this option we need to set. So we're gonna go back here. And remember when we were initializing this, there was the second argument options, which I skipped. So we're gonna pass an object with our options, and that's gonna be this disable day fn, and it should be a function. Now the question is, what is this function supposed to do? It will probably pass the argument, the day. And what are we gonna do with that day? Let's just try to console log the day. I'm just curious. And now I'm doing console log, not logger log, because I'm not on the server side. I'm on JavaScript UI side. So I'm gonna do console log for that day. Just curious what this is gonna give us. It might give us an error too, so let's take a look. I'm gonna go back here, refresh this thing, and click on this. So that brings us that. Select this, hit OK. So the good thing, we didn't get any errors on this. But now let's open the console. And you can do that by pressing F12 key on your keyboard, usually on Chrome or Firefox. And here I'm going to go to my console window. And apparently what it did give me is, yeah, tons of dates. That's what it gives us. It gives us each day. So the question is, how do we disable it? So maybe we could just disable it by giving a conditional statement. Let me just copy that. So instead of doing console log now, let's just return if day equals to, actually we don't want the day, we want value of the day. Is that equal to something if we create a date out of that? And that should be in quotes. So I'll try to explain you this in a second, hopefully if it works. So new date, and we'll do dot value off. Again, let me just refresh and see what happens here. Awesome, 23rd is disabled. That worked. So let me just send this to a couple of new lines so I can explain you what I did here. So we have this object, and to make this look decent, I'm gonna send this to a new line here. This is gonna close that object on top, which we can send right here. Make this okay looking. I'm gonna send this return line to a new line and send this here to close this. Good. All right, so what's happening here, we're initializing this date picker, and with this function we give this disable day function, and this function is going to figure out which days to disable, and apparently it's a true false type of thing. So the days, so it's going to just pass every single day in a calendar through this function day, and if it compares to see that it matches the day that we give it, it will basically just be disabled in here in the box. So in this case, I'm saying if the date that's in there is matching this 23, and apparently that was in this time zone, so we'll have to get our whatever it is to that time zone. And because these are two dates, I have to compare them using value of instead of just comparing the date. Otherwise we'll have two objects, and when you compare two objects in JavaScript, they will not be equal because those are two different objects. So we need to get the value of the object and compare it to the value of the other object. So what we do need, however, we are not going to have just one day, right? We're probably going to have a few different days. So how am I going to do this when I have few different days? So what I need to do, I have to create an array of days that I want to disable. So I'll just create a variable. I'll say disabled days, and it will be an array. And what it needs to be, an array of these dates. Not dates, but date values. But yeah, same thing, kind of. So we're going to do that. I'm going to do a couple of days so we can make sure this works. I'm going to do the 25th as well in this array. And then we can basically just search inside of this array using index of to see if the day is within that array. So here, instead of doing this, I'm going to say this is the day value of. And what I'm going to do here, I'm going to say, let's take the array we already have on top, and let's do index of, and index of will search in that array, right? So we're going to do index of. We're going to search for this day in that array. And if we do find that in that array, it's going to give us something that's 0 or higher, because that will give us the position of whatever we found. So if it's -1, then we didn't find it. So I'm going to say if it's greater than -1, and that's going to give us that true false logic now. So let's see. Now, hopefully, if I did everything right, we should see that 23rd and 25th are both disabled. So I'm going to save this, go back and refresh. Check this. Awesome. 23rd and 25th are disabled. So we figured out the Materialize now disable thing, how we disable dates materialize. And I'm really happy we're using Materialize for this, by the way, just to tell you, because if you had to build this from scratch, this would be like tons of work to build this date picker with all of this, the way it looks, the way it works, the way you disable dates. This is just great. But anyways, let's not advertise Materialize too much, I guess. So let's go back here. So let's now get back to our thing. So now what we need to do, instead of having this disabled days here in this hard-coded thing, somehow we need to get all of these dates from our calendar and bring them here. So we need to set all these dates from our calendar dates instead of setting them from this hard-coded array. So now let's see how we're gonna do that. So now we can take a little break from this, but we have to remember this is what we need to modify. So let's just mod the array. Now let's go back and take a look. So we're gonna go to our code. Let's just see how we connect to the calendar and pull some stuff. Now, if you remember, our calendar had nothing in it. So let's add some things to our calendar. So I'm gonna go here, click something. Click some other thing. And maybe this day will have a couple of things. As you can see, very important meetings. So let's do another one here. And we'll add time for this one just to make sure not everything is set at the same time. Yeah, you can tell I'm not a Google Calendar user, right? So anyways, so there we are. So now I have 24th, 26th, and 27th, some things here. So I don't want these days to be available in the calendar. So now first we need to connect to this calendar and pull this information out of it to see which days we're busy. So let's go to this part. So let's create a new function, I guess, that we will run to see how this works. We'll call it get calendar busy days. So now what we need to do, we need to access our calendar app. In this calendar app, we have to get our calendar. As you can see, we can get all calendars. I'm gonna get calendar, I don't know, I guess by name. It should be calendars. Apparently it's gonna get a few calendars. The name of the calendar is this one. So it says Chicago Computer Classes. Let's do that. So the name is and apparently it's gonna give us calendars, meaning more than one, because I guess you could have multiple calendars that have the same name. So we're gonna have just one. We're gonna keep it nice. So if it's just gonna be one, we're just gonna get the first one, which is by index is number 0 calendar. So that should give us our calendar. So let's just save this to a calendar. That's our variable. So let's just grab that. Let's see if this gives us any autocomplete. And if it does, then we're on a good path. So calendar dot, and great. So it does. So we're on a good path. So get events. Okay, that should be good. So we're gonna get events. Apparently you have a start date and an end date to get your events. For now, let's just do this for this year, and then we may make this more dynamic. So I'm gonna go new date. And I'm doing a new date because it said, just when I was typing this, just to show you. See, it says it's a date object. That's what it needs. So we need to do that. So it's gonna be new date. and another new date. So I'll just do the beginning and the end. And we should be fine with 2019-01-01 and 2019-12-01, I guess. Actually, not 12, but 12/31. Should work for this year at least. Now this is probably gonna give us an array. So let's just save this to a variable. Events, I guess. I'm just gonna log this out to see where we are so far. And this function is called get calendars busy day, and this will be good because it's gonna ask us for permission anyway, so we need to do this. Access to our calendar. Okay, so that did not work. So this calendar wasn't able to get this. So that means calendar was undefined here. Let's see what's going on. Let me try to not do the 0. So nothing. So this name didn't work. So how about doing get all calendars to see what's happening there. So it did get a calendar. And if we look inside of that, now get name. I'm just curious what that name is gonna be now. Oh, so the email address is the name. That's interesting. Okay, didn't realize that. So I guess what we're gonna have to do, we're gonna do get calendars by name, and the name is gonna be this. And we're gonna get the first one. So the name should have been that, not whatever was the readable part. That's interesting. We're gonna run this, and that seems to have gone fine. Now let's see if we can grab some events out of this. Okay, so we got 1, 2, 3, 4 events. And that makes sense because I just made 1, 2, 3, 4 events. That's good. So we're able to get our events. So that's an array of events. Let's just loop through that and see what we can get out of it. So I'm going to go events dot. And before I actually loop through it, let's just look at our first event to just figure out what's going on in this event. So see if I do the 0, which is the first one. So we can get date created, get last updated, but I just want to find out what day it is. Get, it says start time. Yeah, let's do that. Let's get the start time. So let's see what it gives us. We need to log this out, don't we? Okay, save this, run it. There it is. So it says January 24th, and it gives us this GMT time. So getting back to this, January 24th. That's good. That should work for us. Now let's just store all those events in an array. So I'm just going to cut that. Now, instead of doing all of that, I'm just going to map through that events. So I'm going to say var days equals to, and I'll take that events thing and map. And we're going to do our function as our callback function for that. And for each E for event, we'll just return E dot get start time. So let's just log this out. I'm going to run this. View logs. So there is January 24th, January 26th, and January 27th is 5:30. Okay. So I was able to get all of those to an array of dates. Now I don't need the days though. I need the value of, which is timestamp. Good. So now we got this array of timestamps. There is one thing though. If I'm not mistaken, I had two things. See, both of these were on the same day, on the 26th. Let me just go back to my days. So I don't think that would be a problem. But I also don't think we should have all our times for all our meetings publicly available, so that when somebody looks at our code, they can see exactly what time the meeting starts. So I probably will just convert this to 12 a.m. and then just get rid of all the duplicates out of it. So let's just try to convert all of these to 12 a.m. Okay, so I think if we have the time, we should have a method set hours. And if we set it to 0000, that should set it to 12 a.m. Let's just try this. So we got 4 of this. Hard to see what's going on, so I'm going to convert them to string. Here we go. We got 1, 2, 3, 4 timestamps. Now let's take a look. Here we have 1, 2, 3 should be the same because they are the same time. Then we have this one, which is this one. Now let's try to change the time of one of these to see what happens, right? And if our conversion worked, it should bring us back to the same time, even though I might have different times in this. So I'm going to go here. How do you edit these things? Edit time. It's not all day, I guess. We're going to start this 1:30 p.m. Save it. All right, so now 1 is 1:30 p.m. Let's go back and run our code. And we're getting the same timestamp. Awesome. So we're able to convert them both to the same time. That's good. Let me just test this for this date too, really quickly here. So I'm going to add another one here. So let's do one for different time. Yeah, that's just as good. So last 2 should be same too. Go back and look. Good. So that works. We don't really need to convert this to string, but other than that, that's good. So that gives us an array of timestamps. We do need to get rid of all the duplicates out of that. Just have one array, so we don't need multiple for the same day, right? So to do that, we'll just create a variable. We'll say unique days. We'll make it an empty array. And what we'll do, we'll just run through this days array. We'll say, and let's just use for each method. So for each one, we'll pass a function. And that function is going to give us that day, each timestamp. That's what it's going to be, really. And what we'll do, we'll just check if that timestamp is not in here. We'll add it to the list. otherwise will not. So I'm gonna say if that unique days dot index of, and I'm gonna search for that D in that unique days array. So if we search for that and we find that it's not in there, and that's where it's gonna give us -1 index when it doesn't find that day in our array. So initially there's gonna be nothing, so obviously it's not gonna find it. But then as we start adding dates, if it searches and it finds the day, we don't want to add it for the second time. So I'm just gonna push to this unique days my day. That should give us a nice clean list of timestamps. Let's just test this. Run it. View the log. See, I got 3. Good. So I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But because these are on the same day, we don't need to repeat them. We're just going to repeat 1 for 12 a.m. This is good. So this works. We just got a list for us of unique dates finally. Okay, so now because we were able to get this function that's going to give us these unique days, we should be able to just return those from this function instead of just logging those. So that function should return these unique days. And now we just need to get those days in our script side here to populate those right in here. And hopefully that time zone matches this. We'll find out if it does. And what we need to do, we need to basically remember how in one of the previous videos, we had this thing where we were filling up this form, the zip code. If you haven't watched that, maybe watch that. If you fill up the zip code, we would basically send the function to the server side, and with results, we would come back with whatever this estimate thing was. The difference now is going to be we're going to run our function not when the user types in this box, but when the page loads. We could also run that function when somebody clicks in this box. 2 different strategies. For now, I'm just going to keep this, I guess, simpler. I think it would be a good idea to run it when somebody goes in this box in the future. But for now, I'm just going to do on the page load. So on our page load, which is going to be this. So I didn't talk about this event listener, and we copied and pasted this code. But several times I said that all of this should probably go under this document. And what this is because HTML takes time to load on a page. Before you try to find any elements on a page, you might want to make sure that the page has already loaded. And what this does, it's an event listener. It checks if the content of our document object model has loaded. And when it is, then it fires this function at that point. That's exactly what we're going to do. When the page loaded, we're going to go and run a function. What it's going to do, trigger our Google script run thing. I'm going to copy the other one with success handler. This one. So we're going to trigger that. With success handler, we're going to fire another function. Populate dates. Instead of get coast, the function is going to be this function. Now this function doesn't need any arguments. Now it's going to run this, and that's going to return that array that we just made of unique dates, which is awesome. And that's going to call this populate dates function, which will now be outside of this thing. So we're going to go here and create that function. I'll just place it over here so we can see it side by side. Might not be the greatest idea in terms of organizing this. There it is, populate dates. And that's going to receive that array of dates. I'm just going to call it days, which is going to be basically the return from here. So now I'm going to save that, go back. So what I want here to happen, this is where I want to do this to get this date picker working and to set all of this stuff. So I'm just going to cut that out of there and paste it over here. In here, instead of having this disabled days, which is going to be our array, our disabled days is really going to be days, which is what we're going to get back from our other script. So I'm just going to change that to disabled days. And then I don't need this line at all. And then with that, we're going to run this initializer for our date picker, where we'll just go here and disable all of this stuff. Now, the only thing here is that this date picker, we picked it over here. So it's not where probably we want to do that. Let's do it here to keep this more or less organized. Good. So I'm going to test this to see what happens. So save this and save this, save all of this stuff, and try to re-render our code to see what we get. So far, so good. I'm going to click on this. Look at this. 24th disabled, 26th disabled, 27th disabled. Is that the right dates? Great. Let me try to disable, add some more things to our calendar, right? Not disable. So let's add something for February 2nd. Good. Let's add something for the 30th. And something for the 9th. Should make our point. So if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't, right? Go back and we need to reload this page. Open this, 24th, 26th, 27th, 30th. And I go to February, the 2nd and the 9th are 2nd here and the 9th are disabled. Great, so that works. So we're able to integrate our calendar now with this. So we're grabbing all the dates that should not be available and we populate it here in this form. I'm just going to do a simple modification here for the script that I created here. So if you remember, the script I made was from January 1st through December 31st. So instead of doing this, I'm just going to make this a little bit more dynamic. So first I'm going to create a start date variable. And that start date is going to be basically, we'll take today. And we can do that by doing this. So we want to grab our calendar events starting today, right? We don't really need to go in the past, and we might want to actually disable, now that I'm thinking about this, our calendar dates going in the past as well. Now let's go back here, and that's the start date. Now the end date is going to be, let's just set it, we'll do 12 months from now. And we should be able to do that by doing, so I'll do a year later. So I'll do set year for this. And basically, oh, that's going to actually set the year of this. So I'll just do this. I'll just do another new date. And I'll set the year of that date to the year of the start date. So let me just type this and I'll explain what's going on here. So this is what I'm going to do. So I'm creating another date. So new date is going to give us again today's date and time. And what I'm going to do with that, I'm going to take that and I'm going to set the year of that 1 year later. And the way I'm going to say 1 year later, I'm going to say take the date that we already grabbed, that's now, and get the year out of it. And that year is going to be right now 2019. And if we do +1, it's going to go 1 year later. So that should do that. And now we should be able to just do this and this. And now at least we should be able to say that our calendar will have all the dates scheduled for a year from the date that we're checking, right? So if we go back here, let's just refresh this. Open that. So I probably did something wrong there. Let's go back and check. So that gives us a timestamp instead of giving us a date object, apparently. So let's just try to do another new date. There's probably a better way to do this. Save this. January 22nd, 2020. Okay, so that worked. So the other one was returning a timestamp, and this gives us a date which we should be able to use here. Let's go back and test our app. Good, so this works again. We got all our dates here, so it should work from now for a year going forward. Now the only thing I'm going to change here to finish this, I'm just going to disable all the dates before today. So to do that, we're going to just go to our JavaScript side. We should be able to do this here. So we want to disable it when it's either in that array, so it's one of the dates, or when that day is less than today. Think that should work. So I'm gonna save this. Let's go test this. So see, these are all disabled now before today. And then also all the days in our calendar are disabled as well. Great, that works pretty good. And that's how we can now integrate Google Calendar, see, with our own web app. That's just one example. What I'm trying to show you is that this gives you the ability to have the entire array of Google services in your hands. And you can integrate that very easily with your web app without doing like tons of work. So the only thing that bothers me about this is that, remember here, when we refresh this, it doesn't say anything what this field is. And I removed that label, but now I want something here that says something. So let me just go back and take a look. Let me see how they did that. So it's a label. Interesting. I tried to do the label. It didn't work. Let me try it one more time. Maybe I did something wrong there. So I'm going to go to my HTML and there's this date. We're going to add a label. And this is going to be pick appointment date, I guess, or something. Maybe I should take a typing class, but now this should be, maybe I should do the for thing for this to work. Let's see. So it's there. Now it works. Good. So now we have a nice label. We have a nice calendar integrated with our Google Calendar. And that's pretty much all I need to do in this video. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe. And I'll see you in the next one.